During the time we have remaining, um, please know that you can come forward and ask questions. They might be questions about the text, or maybe um, much of what I've spoken about today. Maybe it's called something forward um, that you want to speak about. Doesn't have to be a deep personal thing, but it's good for us to connect because remember, without the relationality, the beauty of the practice, it doesn't come forward. And I'll just remind you that.
Hmm. I always feel so touched and moved when I just see everyone arriving. There's something about that that's just so pleasing and tender. So I was really enjoying that. But when Josh and I were talking about his response to the circle of the way, we'd been talking about lots of different circles, and he mentioned about that in the women's group that I was in for so many years, and still we do some uh, celebrations. We make sure the sun comes up, which we think is pretty important. So we would cast a circle, and when you cast a circle, you call in the directions and you call in the energies of the different directions. And sometimes we would call in sort of specific kind of goddesses, specific kind of named energies. And one of the things that we were always kind of thinking about, wrestling with, talking about was, um, are they real out there? Are they manifestations of our own energy? It was a real interesting, like, because you could feel something when you did it. And the other bit, before I forget, was at the end of that, we would finish and we would say, the circle is open but unbroken.
Mm-hmm.
May the peace of the goddess go in your hearts. And I've always had that. The circle is open but unbroken. So even when we weren't there, something was holding. Um, but I think my question in there is something about this, how we use the outside, the forms and the Buddhas and the chants um, to enliven or connect with something that's inherent in ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and the feeling I always used to have when we called up the sort of energies was a bit like walking through a forest with, and there'd be some mighty tree and it absolutely didn't need you. But if you put your hand on it and felt it and felt through its long history and the seasons and the life it supported and all of that, it liked it. So it did exactly what it was doing. It didn't need you at all, but there was some that was always the feeling in me, like it liked your attention. And that was always the feeling for me of calling up the energies. It's like they're absolutely fine, they don't need servicing or anything, but they liked the attention. And
Mm-hmm.
so when you're talking about this circle of the way, I'm kind of feeling like it's absolutely doing its own thing and we're little tiny motes along the way. But it really likes when we acknowledge it's there or when we give it some intention or attention. That's kind of what's
Yeah,
pottering around in my mind.
I'm so glad that you described some of the ways that you were casting a circle and the meanings because it's really so resonant. And I think there's something universal about it.
Mm.
It isn't Buddhist. There's a way in which Dogen is expressing it in this way, but there's something universal about it. And the inso, like like the one here that you can see behind me, and many that you've created, knee deep, apparently. They're open but unbroken.
Yeah.
That they aren't completed, like sealed off, but they're unbroken.
Mm,
That's one of the reasons I really like this one that Kaz Tanahashi did because it's so wild.
mm,
Too, there's a lot of color and depth and brightness and the other aspect that you're speaking about, which we'll go into even more, I think, during the retreat, is um, that, that life goes on. It doesn't require us. You made the joke which I liked about helping the sun come up. It doesn't really need us, but it seems like it in some way.
mm,
But when we turn toward it and offer our attention to it and let ourselves be enlivened by it, there's a connection that is hard to
mm.
it's hard to describe, but also impossible to turn away from.
Yeah.
And so, for example, in a Japanese Zen um, service, we might do an invocation of calling the ancestors. Um, why would you do? I mean, why would you do that? Does it call up those energies in us? I think it does.
Mm,
Does it honor where the teachings came from? I think that does. Uh, and when you touch life, like you said, I think that's the way we are understanding the shape of reality and being shaped by it, whether it's a tree or the hand of a loved one or the face of your grandbabies. Or the universe wants to be known, and our lived expression of it is the way it knows itself
mm,
in a kind of classical, way you think about it. So I'm not saying anything different than you, but just
mm,
according with it, because we're setting the tone today of how these teachings would be received and how we can look at them.
mm,
And this is crucial,
mm.
I think. And we involve ourselves in practices that sometimes seem so repetitively like there's the native um, folks here get together and clean beaches because especially the beaches on the North Shore, which I can see from here right now, um, there's an immense amount of trash from the ocean that comes up on those shores because of the way the currents are. And 90% of what is picked up, even the smallest pieces, has Japanese kanji on it. And it's not that the Japanese are polluting the oceans, it's from Fukushima.
Mm.
All these years later, it's arriving from the earthquake and the massive tsunami that took that village with it. So we're cleaning up a beach that we don't want. And so much is they bring these giant bags that are like as big as this room, and helicopters take them out. And then a few months later, it's there again. Is it fruitless? Pointless? You do it because that's your vow, because that's what you do. Um, and the action of doing it is the practice,
Yeah.
offering yourself to it. Now, these are things we know, but um, and you could tell the same stories there, of
Mm.
how we take care of things. So thank you for raising your hands and give my best to Jasper.
He came to say hello.
Yes,
Hello. Thank you.
thank you.
Continuation. Hello, friends.
Yes, hello.
It's nice to see
It's good to see you. It's good to see you both there.
you.
Get two for one.
Buy one, get one free.
Hmm. I was very touched by what you said about the circle, like who's included and who's excluded.
Hmm.
And I guess you were sort of alluding to the fact we've gone through some quite dark times, and throughout the world there's been an awful lot of polarity and opposition between people,
Hmm.
and of course that's completely unhelpful. And the way I came at it is because I work in the environment, and COP26 is starting in Glasgow, not far from here,
Yeah.
this weekend, and it occurred to me that if anything realizes that we are all in it together, is that the planet is our only boat, and if the boat sinks, we all sink.
Hmm.
And for me, it's that great wake up call about how do we learn to be relational. And you say relationality is everything, and it's a lovely idea to think that somehow we can melt away all the differences that we have between us, and it's the only way forward. But of course, reality is very difficult and it's very hard to actually sort of manifest that in reality. But I was very touched with the aspiration,
Yeah.
even though it seems like, breaking down the barriers is going to be really difficult. But maybe, the only way forward is for us to realize that, yeah, we are all in it together. And maybe that's the one thing we have, it's that common, we have a common destiny, and we sink or swim together.
And I think that you say you're mentioning something really crucial, that it's the we begin with a shared aspiration, and some language that I read was very uplifting. It's very bright and offers profound possibility. And I think we need that, not as a Pollyanna,
Mm.
because if you think in the ancient guys and the women, everyone in China from the golden ages in, it was just as bad back then.
Mm.
Terrible things were happening. Famines that would wipe out massive amounts of the population, wars, pillaging, and then on you bring it forward. Apparently, this is how human beings are. It doesn't mean it's not workable, but that fundamental thing is not going to be turned around. I'm sorry to say, but it can be worked with, and the more we can call for that goodness, of course, through practice, then that's our way of putting our hand on the tree because it likes it. It's that paradox in the world that you have inhabited many times of one vote doesn't make any difference. And yet, if you don't vote, it makes an immense difference. And so this paradox of what does it really matter that I recycle one piece of plastic? Well, they go one piece, not going to change the world. But that intention is going to make some difference. So it's an odd paradox, isn't it? And I thought it was quite, I think we spoke about this yesterday, um, ironic that people were having trouble getting to the climate summit because of massive storms caused by climate change. Like, hello, there's a problem here. Yeah. And I think we need to, if you were touched or encouraged, that's part of what our practice is for too, is to help us encourage each other in times when it's difficult to be discouraged. And remember what's possible, even if in the global sense we don't see the whole change. It's some of the young people that I talk to are the people that give me the most encouragement because they're very smart. And they grew up with a different view of how the world is. And although some of them say, I'm working as hard as I can for outcomes that I may not see in my lifetime, but it's still worth working for.
Mm. Mm.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. So thank you for calling that forward also. Was there
Mm.
anything else you wanted to say? I started
Well,
talking.
no, I think it just encouraged me. You know, it's so easy to see, you know, things as being right and wrong and good and bad, and I think that's unhelpful. I think it's more about, yeah, love this, who's included and is anybody being excluded. That, you know,
Right.
it's a really helpful reminder, and that really helped me.
Well, and we have the retreat that I led last week had a strong element, an explicit element of social justice and coming to some reconciliation about some things um, very explicitly because it's such a powerful topic in the United States. But I think you face it too,
Mm.
as well, you know, in your own ways, because it's everywhere. This thing about who has the power, who doesn't, who's included, who's not, who attempts to exclude others intentionally, so they maintain power and privilege, all that stuff, and just be able to speak about it and to note it is at least a step to say, hey, this is a problem. Let's stop acting like it's not.
Absolutely.
Hmm.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Flint. Mm.
Yeah.
There we go. You can go further north.
Yeah, it was just it brought up when you were talking about circles. I just started thinking a lot about circles. How the tide is like a circle. You know, the sea going in and out. The moon, it's a
Yeah.
circle, and it becomes a circle slowly over, and then the seasons are a circle because the planet's going round and round, and it's going round and round the sun. That's also a circle, and our galaxy is like a spiral galaxy, and it's going around a circle, a black hole, and it's all got me thinking. And our cells are circles, um,
That's
and
very poetic, Richie.
sorry,
Like you just voiced a poem.
I don't know. It was lovely. Yeah, I was just seeing that, and the spiral got me thinking about the practice. How I get to these points where I feel like I'm getting it, and I think, oh, I think I might be starting to get it, and then it suddenly goes back down, and then I realise that it brings up some difficult things, and I start becoming aware of my own conceit and things like that. And it's can be a bit unpleasant, but then it's like you say, it slowly, it's like letting the light into a room, and then it starts to change, and then you start feeling um, more aware of things or something. But it doesn't seem to end. It always seems to return again. Always seems to go back down again, and then back up again and down, just like a spiral. But it made me think. I hadn't thought about it the way you said, where it's also going the other way around. So it's also
Yeah.
coming out too. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, as you describe this, I'm really called to remember when we've done some of our retreats in Devon and the area in the south, the the retreat facility which we use up on the hill above, there is a beautiful labyrinth, and of course you see this spiraling, but as you enter the labyrinth, you sometimes you're, you're headed for the center, but you have to go way around sometimes, and you get really close, and then you're thrown way out again, and then only way in, if you follow it, you won't get lost, and the way out is the same way, and we do it together. And so as we walk it, it's really amazing practice. And it just makes me think of what you're talking about. If you get a chance, or maybe you've walked a labyrinth before, it's really lovely in that way, especially with other people.
Yeah. I think they
Yeah.
originally created it as a spiritual practice, didn't they? The
Yeah.
labyrinths, the
Yeah.
ancient people. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm.
I'm glad you're with us.
Yeah, yeah. I'm glad to be here too. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
nice. It's nice to see everyone. Take care. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Flint.
Yeah, now we'll go
Um,
back across the pond.
yeah, back across. So First, I wanted to respond to Josh's question about circles in our lives. And the first thing I thought of was folk dancing, which I did a long time ago and really enjoyed. And it was holding hands in a circle. It was just very lovely. And then I do use circles. I do favor circles in my artwork. I find it a very comforting shape. And in the text, I felt like Dogen created a circular thought here when he says, okay, accordingly, by the continuous practice of all Buddhas and ancestors, your practice is actualized. By your continuous practice, the continuous practice of all Buddhas is actualized. And I just love that. And I just, that's also very comforting to me because it's, you know, it's following and then coming back. And, you know, it's just a lovely reciprocity.
Yeah, you see that
and then
Dogen's language is circular.
Yeah, I noticed that in
Does
another
that.
verse. Yeah, it's comforting. And then in your scroll that you showed us, the overlapping circle at the top,
Mhm.
is there a meaning to that? I mean, I thought of something, but maybe I thought of
Well, it just starts
student.
out with Buddha, goes through all the ancestors, comes back, and there's another circle. It's like the circle is not broken, but it's a continuous flow
But
of.
there was a circle and then a line circle within, you know, that overlapping
Right,
circle.
right. What did you see?
Yeah,
What did you?
I saw a student and teacher,
You saw what? Student and teacher?
student and teacher. Yeah, the overlapping circles. Yeah. And
That's
then my
what.
question,
Go ahead.
go ahead.
Oh, that everyone comes back as that.
Oh, you were a little frozen there, so I didn't get that sentence. But
Are we back now?
yes, now we are.
We were
Okay.
both. I'm just saying the student returns to the source.
Okay. Thank you.
And there's a line in the head student ceremony, the Shuso ceremony at the end, where the Shuso hands the staff back to the teacher and whispers into the teacher's ear, water returns to the source.
Beautiful. Okay, and
Just-
lastly, the question, this great road, and it's not a question for you to answer, but for all of us, is how do we make it more inviting and accessible to more people?
Yeah, that's right. Stay tuned.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
There we go.
Hi, Darcy.
Hi, Flint. So I wanted to comment on what Trudy had to say.
Mm-hmm.
Trudy really struck me. You know, it's about energies of, and you talked too about energies of ancestors, and you talking about energies of, you know, I'm not sure what, but, you know, and I've been contemplating how to take in energy, you know. This is my late daughter. And I loved what Trudy said too about how universal energies don't need me, but they like my attention. And I thought about, you know, the sun coming up. The sun doesn't need me to make it rise, but it likes my attention. And what occurred to me is the sun comes into me.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was thinking about how do we, as bodhisattvas, you know, learn to reflect, it's by putting attention. The universe doesn't require our attention. Maybe that's a way to put it. You know, and like you said, the circle is unbroken. Even if we step outside of it, it's still there. But when we put our attention back on it, then we're feeding it and the whole universe. I don't know, the whole thing.
Yeah,
What?
exactly. Yeah, if let's say that the great calamity happens and there are no more humans, then will the sun keep coming up and will there still be, I mean, things will go on. And yet our presence here makes a big difference.
Yeah.
The
And
line that I often quote from the Mary Oliver poem, The Buddha's Last Instruction, where she says, "Clearly I'm not needed, yet I find myself becoming something of inextricable value."
and that embodiment of what doesn't require us. So I was thinking about that in reference to what Ernie and I were doing today.
Oh,
We were packing up a bunch of things that, like, a bunch of some pet things, some things from my house, you know, getting rid of. And I told him, I said, this this is this is a gift that I want to, like, I don't want to throw it in the truck. I want each thing to get in there with me, and I'm switching it, trying to go home, you know. And he's like trying to rush because the wind is coming through, and we're trying to load it up real fast. And anyway, it just occurred to me that it's that continuous thing flowing out, all these other things that don't have much value in and of themselves, but their value is going to continue to our attention.
precisely. You know, you're enacting the fact that there's nothing that in and of itself is sacred. It's how we treat things that make them sacred. And so what we were saying is, this isn't stuff. These are sacred objects and vessels, and even if it's a cardboard box put in the back of a truck, treat it as if we're moving a Buddha statue or, you know, something sacred, the scripture, because it is, if we begin to look at it that way.
It doesn't have value and it doesn't have importance. That's not the activity that I would do.
And the same is true for each other. We can treat each other as sacred or we can treat each other as objects. And that's how we exclude people from the circle. Glad you're with us.
I'm glad to be here.
Did you have a particular, I was just going to ask, do you have any particular question of Trudy? Or did you get to say what you needed?
I also like what she said. Is it just an energy out there, or is something manifesting from me or in me? Does anything else have to say about it? I
Okay.
said everything
Well,
that
okay. I'm just saying if you wanted, we could have her come over and if you had a comment, Trudy, you could offer it. If not, you can just bow. There she is.
I was it never stopped being a question. That question about whether something is kind of out there or in here. It's like I never had any sense of resolution with it, but it didn't matter. That, it's kind of like it didn't need nailing down. It didn't need. It's just like, oh, how fascinating. Um,
And it's best not to nail it down, actually.
yeah, it was just like a lovely thing to kind of just keep playing with. Um, and then I was thinking a lot about, I'm sure lots of people will know it, the quote from Sri Nisargadatta about my heart, my mind thinks I'm everything, and my heart knows I'm nothing, and between the two, my life flows. Is
Yes.
that the right way round? It's something like that.
Hmm.
Um, and that feels to me like that paradox of we are of inestimable value and small birds flying through the night.
Yes, and I think there's a variant of that which becomes really intimate. The situation with Darcy, because having just lost your daughter,
Yeah.
the question of is she gone or is she here? That's a question to live with, not to answer.
Thank you for bringing it around to being a question. And
Yeah.
Josh brought up an inquiry for me, the whole always, always with you title of discussion. And I'm thinking, what does it mean? And I not really question my answer. I had an answer. It would
Yeah.
be moving.
Well, I think I've told you the rather cheeky sounding thing when I've brought some questions to my mentor John Gladfelter, and he would say, "That is such a good question. It would be a shame to answer it." That sometimes that's a useful thing.
Hmm.
Yeah. So thank you, and thanks Trudy for uh, dropping in here with us.
Pleasure.
So I've got this uh, curious paradox, I think, which of course is where the questions live. Um, that sense of both folding and unfolding, um, and um, yet arriving at the same time.
Mhm.
So I suppose my question is the possibility of both being together, and yeah, I think that's the question. That how do they sit together?
Well, alone together. Um, there's an aspect of your subjective experience that I'll never know. I can't see from where you are, and yet we're inextricably bound in you are and who I am is one activity. And you may be talking about something different, but that's what comes to mind at first. That sort of understanding that uniqueness and specificity and unity are two faces of one reality, sort of like the particle and wave thing, in physics with light. They're both true, although they seem quite different. And I don't know if I'm touching on what you're asking, and if so, also uh, what's its meaning for you, its importance.
I think there's something, well, it kind of links with some of the things that uh, Trudy and Darcy were saying as well. I think there's that sense of uh, um, even my own existence is is a continuous mystery. And I guess this evening we've been unfolding, we're continually unfolding. So there's something about there's never a true place of arrival, and yet there is a place of arrival as well. And that's the thing that I think that's the paradox that I'm kind of sitting with, is that we're always flowing. I don't know how to put it, but yet there is a don't know how to put it, really, like a centered energy or a centeredness or a place that feels like a place of arrival with each other. I'm not putting it very well, I don't think. But
Well, you're doing just fine because you're enacting and expressing uh, a reality that is beyond words, and yet you're doing your best to talk about the contingent flow of the way things actually are when you understand impermanence and profound mutual causality. It's like there's not a stopping place. I mean, it's all flowing, and yet because of our consciousness, our individual consciousness, we have moments which feel like arrivals. It's you could call it an illusion, but I think they're really lovely illusions, that it's useful to have those moments of knowing this and that and having distinctions and specificity within the ongoing flow, because it's how we connect, it's how we relate, it's how we come to know each other. Always holding in the back that it's just a flow and that there's only one outcome to this life,
a beautiful illusion.
Yeah, and to live with that, um, with each other. That's some of the poignancy and power that Kobunchino Roshi was talking about of our lives. Once we realize the rare and beauty of what it means to be alive, to be immersed in this river, this flow that we've entered by practicing and being aware of it. We're in it anyway, but stream enterers, as the Buddha called us, if we're practicing the way. But he also used the same word in talking about going against the stream, which is against the stream of habit and unconsciousness and unwholesome activity. So it's a beautiful, it's a deep paradox and a beautiful illusion to use.
Thank you. Another mystery.
Yes, another mystery. Continue with the mystery.
Thank you.
We even have to follow the beautiful illusion of time, knowing that it's time to begin to close, I think, for the evening.